The first thing I heard was my own name, dragged, twisted, and tossed around like a bad punchline. Laughter followed. The kind that slices through the night and leaves its mark long after it fades. "Man, she couldn't even land a job walking dogs," chuckled Terence, one of my husband's smug business partners. The others burst out laughing, their whiskey glasses clinking in approval. And right in the center of their private circus stood Malcolm, my husband of 9 years, raising his glass like a ringmaster in our luxury Silvercrest Towers penthouse. Every man in that room wore success like armor, tailored suits, polished smiles, and the arrogance of men who thought they owned the world. They didn't know they were laughing inside a palace built by the very woman they were mocking. I swirled the bubbles in my crystal flute of sparkling water, my face arranged into a mask of practiced grace. To them I was Tiana Reed, the housewife with no resume, no career, no voice. They were wrong. Earlier that day, I'd signed a discreet deal with Harlow & Quinn Intelligence, a private investigative firm specializing in high-level corporate purges. Within 12 hours, every man in that room would be locked out of his email, marched out by security, and under federal review for fraud, discrimination, and insider trading. But tonight I played my part, the quiet, harmless wife sipping water while the men devoured their own futures. Malcolm leaned back in his leather chair, swirling a glass of bourbon that wasn't even bought with his own money. "Remember when she tried to apply for that temp admin job at Orion Tech?" he said with mock sympathy. The HR report was a disaster. The laughter that followed was sharp and loud. I bit my tongue. That so-called interview had been part of a sting I'd designed myself through one of my shell companies. The HR recruiter was an actor. The entire exercise had been to expose bias, and the men now laughing had proven themselves textbook examples. I had every second of it on tape. "You know, Tiana," Malcolm continued, his tone dripping with condescension, "the cafe near our gym is hiring. You'd look cute in one of those little aprons." "Don't forget the tips," Terence added. More laughter. I smiled, a small, polite curve that said, "I'm used to this." But inside I was cataloging faces. Who laughed the hardest, who led the taunts, who stayed silent. Predators always expose their hierarchy when they think the prey can't bite back. These were the same executives who had blocked promotions for women, dismissed qualified engineers as too emotional, and buried HR complaints like spare change under the rug. The same men I had personally recruited years ago under aliases, testing just how easily greed could be guided. Tomorrow they'd learn their lesson. As the laughter grew louder, I rose from my seat with a gentle sigh. "I think I'll head upstairs," I murmured. "Big meeting tomorrow." Malcolm didn't even glance at me. "Don't wait up, baby. We're celebrating Deshaun's promotion tonight. Might get wild." Deshaun, my informant. I climbed the marble stairs, leaving behind the haze of cigar smoke and ignorance. My sanctuary awaited, the hidden study no one in this house knew existed. Behind a false wall of law books, a biometric panel blinked to life beneath my palm. The moment it recognized me, the real office came alive. 3 curved monitors flickered on, glowing with blue-white light. My private network connected instantly to Orion Tech's central servers, their financial systems, R&D archives, global personnel files. All of it. Ping sounded. A message from Renee Porter, my head of operations. "All teams in motion. Clearance confirmed. Board meeting 0900. Confirm presence as CEO, Nova Cross." I replied with one word. Confirmed. Nova Cross. The ghost name no one had ever traced, the founder and unseen chief executive of Orion Tech. Back in 2011, I'd started the company in a 1-bedroom apartment in Atlanta, using the final $18,000 from my late father's insurance payout. He'd lost everything in a hostile takeover of his small logistics firm. Watching him crumble had taught me one thing. Power without protection is a death sentence. So I built Orion to safeguard creators like him. And it thrived. But power attracts leeches. My first fiancé siphoned money from joint accounts. My second stole my designs. By the time I met Malcolm, I had a theory to test. Could someone love me if they thought I was ordinary? He'd seemed gentle, grounded, sweet. Until the rings went on. Then the entitlement began, subtle at first, then blatant. He mistook my silence for weakness, my humility for stupidity, my patience for surrender. He was about to learn otherwise. I worked through the night, assembling final dossiers. Fraudulent invoices, fake vendor contracts, confidential recordings. At 3 a.m., I watched the security feed as the last drunk executive stumbled into a limousine. They didn't notice the cameras embedded in the cars or the microphones on the driver's lapels. By dawn, every file was encrypted and stored in legal archives. At 6 o'clock sharp, I dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. Minimal jewelry, hair pulled tight, a face calm enough to hide a revolution. Today wasn't just business. It was Judgment Day. The October air outside Orion Tower carried a thin mist, like the city itself was pausing for what came next. I stepped through the revolving doors with my shoulders relaxed and my eyes lowered, playing the role I'd rehearsed. Lena Miles, here for a 9 o'clock screening with Human Resources, I said to the receptionist, adding a nervous chuckle for effect. My handler arrived right on cue. Harold Benton, middle-aged, overeager, the kind of man who confuses manners with merit. He offered a clammy handshake and shepherded me through glass corridors I knew better than the architects who designed them. Every ergonomic chair, every adjustable desk, every heat-mapped floor plan for productivity. My choices. And here I was pretending to see them for the first time. He parked me in a small conference room where 3 interviewers waited. Ms. Calder, Ms. James, and Mr. Pike. Their smiles were thin, their questions thinner, a pageant of patronizing tones and coded skepticism. So Lena, Mr. Pike said, skimming my fake resume, how would you handle fast-paced environments when you've never really had one? I built one in my last role, I answered softly, letting my voice wobble. I can learn. They traded looks. I counted policy violations as they slipped from their mouths. Leading questions, inconsistent scoring, casual bias dressed in corporate neutral language. I apologized when I dropped my folder. Mr. Pike smirked. Ms. Calder didn't bother to hide her eye roll. By the time the interview ended, I'd already filed 3 anonymized complaints through our new ethics channel. Renee Porter would see to the rest. Harold walked me back to the lobby with a sympathetic shrug. We'll be in touch, he lied. At 9:57, I stepped into the private elevator. My posture changed. My breathing leveled. The timid candidate dissolved. When the doors opened on the executive level, Nova Cross returned. Renee met me at the secure entrance, her locks pulled into a sleek bun, expression focused. Systems are stable. Legal is live. The board's in the Aurora suite. Malcolm is still downstairs in strategy. Deshawn recording. Yes. She nodded. Front row. We entered the boardroom washed in warm light. The skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but no one looked at it. 6 directors, all sharp suits and sharper instincts, turned toward me. Some had heard whispers. A few had put the math together. None expected the ghost to walk in. At the head of the table sat Vernon Clay, our longest-serving director, a man who'd quietly defended my anonymity when others called it a myth. He folded his hands. Ms. Cross, he said, voice steady, this isn't a quarterly. No, I replied, taking my seat. This is surgery. Renee tapped the console, and the evidence began. Falsified expense streams, buried HR complaints, retaliation trails, vendor shells, leaks to rival shops, a cascade of rot mapped in clean, irrefutable lines. No drama, just data. Then I cued the audio. Malcolm's laugh filled the room. Bragging, belittling, confessing without once using the word. Tighten jaws. A couple of board members stared at the table as if the wood might answer for him. They say an organization decays from the head, I said calmly. Today we cut clean. Vernon looked to the others. One by one hands rose. Unanimous. Begin, I said. Renee's team triggered the purge. Badges went dead. Inboxes froze mid-sentence. Admin privileges evaporated. Our command center tracked every retaliation attempt in real time, flipping would-be damage into logged evidence. Legal notices queued for delivery. Witness protections activated. On the third floor, Malcolm's badge wouldn't open the restroom. His calendar went blank. 2 security officers arrived, with Deshaun standing nearby, hands in his pockets, unreadable. I watched the feed long enough to see curiosity curdle into panic. I stepped out to meet the elevator. The doors parted. Malcolm stumbled forward, confusion hardening into anger when he saw me standing there. Composed, unbothered, unshaken. "Tiana, what is this?" he demanded. "A transition," I said. "My email's gone, my access is blocked." "Did you break something?" "No," I replied evenly. "We fixed something." He laughed. "Brittle, performative. The board won't back whatever stunt you're pulling. They already did." He glanced at Deshaun, then back at me. "What did you do?" "I removed a threat to my company." He blinked. "Your company?" I let the mask drop. Orion Tech, founded in 2011 in a 1-bedroom off Cascade Avenue. Seeded with $18,000 from my father's insurance. First product, a secure orchestration kernel license to regional banks. Year 5 revenue, $210 million. Your contribution, a last name and a watch collection that ticks too loud. He stared, stunned, then tried to laugh again. "You're saying you're Nova Cross?" "I'm saying I built the place you pretended to run. And I'm done pretending." Behind him, the elevator chimed, patient as a metronome. "Where am I going?" he asked, softer now. "Legal. They have options for you. Few are pleasant." He opened his mouth to argue. I turned away. "And Malcolm," I added without looking back, "you're not the only one." The doors slid shut on his face, and for the first time all morning the building felt quiet. Not empty. Cleansed. I returned to the operations suite. Renee handed me a tablet streaming live dashboards, security events, legal intake, sentiment heat maps. Red turned to amber. Amber drifted toward green. Contained chaos, exactly as planned. "Micah Rhodes just attempted a remote login from a burner," Renee said, eyes on the alerts. "Log it, trace it, block it," I replied. A map pin flared, dimmed, died. We rolled the footage from last night. Malcolm, Terrence, the others, talking too freely, laughing too loud, mocking audits, boasting about massaging metrics. They weren't confessing. They were granting us permission. At 2 o'clock I went live to the company for the first time in our history. Not as a rumor or a signature, but a person. "Good afternoon," I began, the Orion insignia behind me and silver crest sparkling over my shoulder. "My name is Nova Cross. If you only knew me as a whisper, that ends today. In the last day, we terminated senior leaders for violating the ethics that built this place. The rumors you've heard are the polite version. The truth is uglier, and it's over." Comments poured in across the internal feed. Shock, support, disbelief melting into relief. "This isn't collapse," I said. "It's rebirth. We're installing an employee-led oversight council. Every dismissed complaint gets reopened. If you felt unseen, unheard, unsafe, now is your time. I will see you. I will hear you." Renee gave me a subtle nod from off-camera. The metrics were swinging our way. I ended with a line I meant with my whole chest. "We were never broken. We were betrayed. Let's begin again." When the stream cut, legal moved. NDAs with poison pill clauses were neutralized. Quiet audits lit up accounts tied to the ousted crew. More debris surfaced. Hush bonuses, kickback vendors, side deals with competitors. One encrypted file set my teeth on edge. Project Meridian. It took less than 3 days for the tremors to reach every corner of Orion Tech. What started as a quiet recalibration turned into an earthquake that no one could ignore. Malcolm, Terrence, and the rest of their clique had gone from boardroom arrogance to frantic desperation. They flooded inboxes, reached out to old allies, and called in favors that no one intended to return. But when your empire burns, No one wants to get caught holding a match. By Thursday morning, the press had caught the scent. The phantom CEO of Orion Tech unmasked. The woman who built an empire in silence. Headlines blazed across every major outlet. Social media had its own storm, less forgiving, far more brutal. Clips from the drunken dinner leaked online. The men who once laughed about women being too emotional for leadership were now meme material. Their laughter, once smug, was now a soundtrack to their downfall. As for Malcolm, every recorded insult, every tone of mockery, every slur, it was all public. The same world he'd looked down on now stared back with disgust. By Friday, Orion's stock rebounded higher than it had in 6 months. Investors loved a good redemption arc, a clean slate, a female CEO who'd quietly outmaneuvered corruption from within. The market called it decisive leadership, called it justice. The board gathered again for what we named the renewal session. Relief replaced tension. The mood was cautious but hopeful. Vernon leaned back, studying me over his glasses. "You did more than salvage this company," he said. "You gave it a soul." "Souls are messy," I replied, half smiling. "But they survive what greed can't." We spent the next hours rebuilding structure, rewriting policies, instituting anonymous ethics lines, reclassifying leadership hierarchies. Renee introduced a zero-tolerance clause for retaliation. I signed it immediately. Then, just after lunch, a notification pinged across my tablet. A private message from Malcolm. One line, no greeting. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" I stared at it for a moment before closing the thread. Some fights aren't worth the reply. That afternoon I took a slow walk through Orion Tower. For years I'd avoided these hallways in person, choosing distance over recognition. But this time, as I passed teams chatting, engineers collaborating, and employees smiling, not forced smiles but real ones, something shifted. Respect replaced fear. Transparency replaced rumor. In the main lobby, the portrait wall stood, a timeline of Orion's history. The last frame had always been empty, reserved for the founder. For 12 years that space had stayed blank, waiting. Renee joined me there, holding her phone, her eyes glinting with quiet pride. "It's time," I said. She nodded and made the call. An hour later, workers mounted the final frame. Nova Cross, founder. Theo, visionary. Survivor. The plaque gleamed beneath the warm lights. My reflection caught faintly in its surface. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost haunting her own creation. It felt present. Oh. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. No longer the silent woman standing behind men with louder voices. I was the one leading the chorus now. Outside, the autumn sky over Silvercrest burned gold, streaked with clouds and the promise of peace. Not the quiet kind, but the earned kind. The empire I built in shadows now stood in the light. And this time, no one would mistake my silence for weakness. For a brief moment, the calm felt real. The building buzzed with energy again, laughter echoing in break rooms, emails filled with collaboration instead of commands. But beneath the surface, I knew something darker was stirring. Project Meridian was still open on my encrypted drive, pulsing like a heartbeat. Even after we shut down the first breach, the pattern of the code told another story, one that didn't end with Malcolm. Late that evening, I sat alone in my private suite, screens flickering around me like a constellation of secrets. Renee had gone home, exhausted after a 16-hour shift. I promised her rest. I promised her it was handled. Light. Using one of my ghost credentials, I tracked the last outbound pings from the Meridian files. They didn't lead to any of our old servers. Instead, the trail went deeper, rerouted through 6 layers of obfuscation and a private server hub registered under an unfamiliar name. Solunet Holdings, a shell company incorporated in Dubai just 4 months earlier. Malcolm didn't have that kind of reach. Someone else did. I initiated a trace, rerouting my own IPs through dummy channels. The code signature I uncovered made my stomach tighten, a string of identifiers linked to a government-contracted data consortium. They hadn't just wanted to steal Orion's AI architecture. They wanted to weaponize it. A soft chime cut through the silence. "Can't sleep either," came Vernon's voice through the secure line. "Not when ghosts keep rewriting my algorithms," I answered. He sighed. "You found something else. Something bigger." Meridian wasn't his idea. It was an entry point. Vernon hesitated. "We can push this to Federal Nova. Make it their problem." I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. "No. If we hand this over now, they'll bury it before sunrise. This isn't about one man's greed anymore. It's about what they built behind him." "Then you'll need help," he said. "Real help." "I already have it." The next morning I convened a closed operations team, 3 of our top data engineers, handpicked from departments far outside executive radar. Young, brilliant, and loyal. Aaliyah, our lead crypt analyst, cracked the first encryption wall before lunch. By dusk, she'd mapped the nodes to 7 more international contacts, all linked through shell vendors and shadow contracts authorized months before Malcolm's removal. The betrayal ran deep. Not emotional this time, but institutional. As the hours passed, I realized that Orion had been bleeding quietly long before I struck my first blow. Every board decision, every acquisition, every confidential file transfer had been tracked, copied, and sold. Malcolm was a puppet. The real puppeteer was still out there. By 11 p.m., I stood at the glass wall of my office, watching Silvercrest's skyline shimmer under streetlights. Somewhere out there, someone was watching me back. I could feel it. My phone buzzed. A new message from an encrypted number. "You can't fix what you built to break." No signature. No trace. Just a reminder that the war I declared had only just begun. I closed the phone, turned off the lights, and whispered to the empty room. "Then let's break it all the way down. Because empires, like code, are only as safe as the woman rewriting them." The next 72 hours rewrote everything I thought I knew about power, loyalty, and fear. The investigation into Solunet Holdings unraveled faster than even Aaliyah predicted. The shell trail led to offshore subsidiaries of a multinational data syndicate that had quietly bought controlling stakes in smaller tech firms worldwide. Their motive wasn't just profit, it was control. They wanted our AI infrastructure, the predictive analytics engine we'd built to protect independent creators, and they were repurposing it into surveillance technology. I didn't sleep. None of US did. While Renee coordinated legal firewalls and Vernon kept the board occupied with the illusion of stability, I worked behind the scenes to dismantle the system that had infiltrated us. Every night, our command center glowed like a city within a city, screens humming, keyboards clicking in rhythm with adrenaline. "Whoever's behind this," Aaliyah murmured at 3 a.m., "they're not expecting you to fight back this fast." I smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a show." We launched Project Exodus, a counterintelligence operation that turned Orion's network into a mirror trap. The next time Solunet's agents tried to access our data, they'd walk straight into a firewall rigged to feed them falsified information, data that traced back to their own server farm in Luxembourg. By dawn, the sting was complete. The breach attempt came at 6:14 a.m. sharp. They took the bait. The following day, international news outlets broke another headline. "Global surveillance scandal exposed through Orion Tech counterhack." I watched it unfold from my office window as the city below erupted in sirens, interviews, and breaking news tickers. Investors panicked. Governments denied involvement. And amid the chaos, Orion Tech stood unscathed, the only company that had fought back and won. Renee burst into the room, breathless, holding her tablet. "Nova, we did it. Every single shadow account is frozen. Every trace points to them, not us." I exhaled for the first time in days. "Then we make it public." That afternoon I addressed the company again. The virtual auditorium overflowed with thousands of employees, news outlets, and partners waiting for my words. 2 weeks ago, I began. We removed those who abused their power. Today we faced the ones who built that power in the dark. And we didn't just survive, we exposed them. Applause filled the chat stream, but I raised my hand. This victory isn't mine alone. It belongs to every person who refused to look away when it was easier to stay quiet. To every coder, every engineer, every assistant who believed integrity still mattered. This, I gestured to the Orion logo behind me, is the new blueprint. Not just for us, but for every company that's forgotten who built it. When the broadcast ended, the air in the building felt electric. People clapped in hallways. Security guards smiled. Even the janitorial staff, who'd watched the rise and fall of every executive before me, nodded in quiet respect. Later that evening, I stood before the founder's wall again. My nameplate gleamed under soft light. I reached out, tracing the engraved letters with my fingers. Nova Cross, the name I had once hidden, now carved into permanence. Vernon approached quietly. So what happens now? I turned, the city skyline behind me a canvas of gold and silver. Now, said. Now we build something that can't be bought, silenced, or stolen. He smiled. You've already done that. I looked out over Silvercrest, where the towers reflected the fading sun. The storm had passed, but its echo would linger, a warning and a promise. For years I had been the phantom in the system, the invisible architect behind men who claimed my throne. But tonight, under the glow of a city finally free from their shadow, I wasn't invisible anymore. The world knew my name, and for the first time I wasn't hiding it.